What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the One More Rep podcast. I'm your host. My name is Joseph Percher. With me this time, Austin Brown. You
What's up,
guys
man?
that are joining us, I want to encourage you to help us out and subscribe to the channel. We're just getting this started, so it's always a big help when people join along. Like the video, leave us a comment. That stuff helps big time too. And ring the bell. That way you're notified every time we put up a new video on the channel. I'm doing these multiple times a week, so that could be a big help. And like I said, we got Austin who's cruising in here less than 6 weeks now from the Arnold.
Yeah. I guess it's like right at 5.5 now. So
Right on.
we're on where it's like a Thursday, I think, that we're on stage. So
Oh, right on. Okay. So getting there, dude. Um,
Mm.
any update you want to give? Body weight, cycle, what you're eating, anything like that?
uh my lowest I've seen on the scale is 236.5. That was last week, late in the week. And then I chose to feed up a little bit this weekend, and then now I'm just digging back out, and I was like 238 today or something. But yeah, just food wise, the diet's pretty aggressive right now just because I had a shorter time period. So just try to get there. But I feel good with conditioning. Everything's good. Response is really good. So it's good. It was funny because I jumped in this prep at like 9 weeks out, right? And I felt really good at that point. I was like eating, growing, dude. It wasn't 5 days into this diet, like starting out so lean, that I felt like straight to the deep end of prep. And I was like, whoa. I didn't usually, I gradually get into that, and this one was just like, well, fuck you, like immediately. So that's been a little bit interesting, but no, it's all good, man. I'm excited. So it's like the end already. So
It's tolerable when things are aggressive when you're getting the result that you need.
that's it.
It
Yeah.
can be frustrating, and you can almost feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel if things are aggressive and you're really working, like diet slow or cardio's a ton,
Yeah.
and the result isn't coming. That's when things can get a little frustrating, which
Yeah.
we've probably all been there. I've definitely been there, and that can be frustrating or almost discouraging. But I mean, just from what an outsider sees, because I see, what you choose to share on Instagram, you're looking righteous, dude. You're looking right on point, right where you need to be. And it's cool because you did just go through that prep kind of at the end of 24, and I feel like you're bigger.
Oh, and undoubtedly, man. Like I was nowhere near this lean at 240 last go around. So I'm not sure really where I land, but I don't really care because it's overall only at the Arnold. So it's like
Right. You got to
just
beat everybody anyway.
right, just weigh in at my best look for whatever that may be. And right, kind of like slingshotting the drugs and all at once. Like usually it's a gradual approach, but I was like, I'm 8 weeks out, it's like
It's
send
go
it,
time.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been really interesting because I've never done that. So like my weight stayed pretty high, but like I'm getting, notably leaner every other day.
That is truly like what that everyone talks about it, and anytime someone's weight goes up or stays the same in contest prep, everyone's like, oh, that's the Laverne effect. But truly I mean, if we're gonna speak candidly, like the and I wasn't in the circle with Kevin, but from everything that I've heard from people that could be trusted, that was the idea, is that he was just not on drugs and not training and not eating for 8 months out of the year. And then he would literally slingshot everything, not only in terms of the drugs like you're talking about, but he started training full force. He started eating like a bodybuilder. He started doing, 2 a day cardios. He would throw it all in at 12 or fucking 14 weeks out or whatever it was. And when you do all that at once, yeah, you get like a crazy effect, it seems. Now, do you want to talk cycle at all? Are you comfortable with it, or we can move on and start the questions?
I'll say it's the most aggressive I've been with drugs yet.
Yeah.
Like, given the time frame and like what's at stake. So I'll
Sure.
say that. I don't necessarily want to say my dosages, but I kind of like I don't mind talking about the setup. It's
Yeah.
moderate test approach with a pretty substantial amount of DHT derivatives, and um, I am using some orals this prep, which I typically don't do, but like I'm using Winstrol, also like instead of just straight Masteron, which I typically do. But yeah, so that's pretty much, and then yeah, a little bit of Tren as well. So that's the setup and pretty straightforward. So
Yeah, very straightforward. And so you typically do your entire prep without orals, like you won't bring them in at 2 weeks out or anything like that?
no, I don't even use them, man.
Really?
Yep. The sometimes I will use them if I'm really having a hard time, like getting somebody out of a hole. Like I will
Sure,
use like Anadrol or something. Like I've did
sure.
that a little bit my last prep, but yeah, no, I just stay away from them, man. I just found like oral D or the just oil DHTs like Masteron and Primo. It just does the same thing, but lab work always looks significantly better.
That's true. And have you had like a bad experience other than just like what you see on blood work? Have you had a bad experience with them before? Or, I'm just curious because that's pretty unorthodox. Usually you hear guys hitting it pretty hard oral wise at the end, if no other time. Like I don't use them at all in the off season, but then when I'm
Yeah,
down the stretch, I'm pretty well loaded up on them, to be honest.
I notice. I feel like I notice a well-being difference.
Mm,
Like I feel like I can feel like so like your liver's like the fat burning organ, right? And then it's
yeah.
also being stressed out with these orals. Like, and I feel like there's like I feel like I can tell that. Like I feel different this
Mm,
prep, but what's to say that's not something else as well? But like in the past, I can't even. It's been so long since I used them. Like I originally got away from them for digestive reasons.
right.
Um, I just didn't. So like I had some experiences there. But yeah, I mean, I think I do feel that difference, and I wonder if that's what it is. I feel like it probably could be.
Definitely could be. And I feel like when it's your own body and especially drawn out over multiple um like a sample size that's more than just one, like your gut in terms of like your gut feeling about something is usually right. I feel like in this game, especially when you're educated the way that you are. Was the Winstrol something that bothered your stomach in terms of digestion? Because that I have definitely seen myself.
Yeah, it used to be, and I haven't had that issue this time. So whether it was like,
Nice.
something that was going on with like my gut microbiome at the time that isn't now, or vice
Yeah.
versa, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe
But
stress is less, you're in a better place mentally or whatever with
I know
life.
like yeah, I know like early in my bodybuilding days, like my digestion was nowhere near as like streamlined as it is now. Like I feel like
Hmm.
I would interfere with a lot of, and a lot of in prep specifically, I struggle with it because I didn't quite put all the pieces of the puzzle together properly with it. And like when
Right.
stimulants are being abused, you know what that can do to, digestion and everything. So, that could have been a part of it. Who knows, right?
Well, that and I find too, so many people like, they're hungry and they want to be satisfied with their food, and people end up like way over seasoning their food. And a lot of times seasonings are like largely based like in garlic and onion, like things that we know really can screw up somebody's stomach.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm guilty of this myself, absolutely.
Say anything for some
Uh,
flavor, right? So,
yeah,
but
yeah.
right, that shit just wrecks you.
Especially when I've been at points where it's like, fuck, man, 6 out of your 7 meals are just like chicken and veggies for the day. It's like, man, I need to season the shit out of this chicken because I'm losing
Bro,
my mind.
my diet today has been fucking. This morning I had 400 grams of liquid egg whites and 2 eggs. That was
Yeah,
meal one.
that
Nothing,
sounds like a
and then
Samson breakfast.
bro, like, and then meals 2 through 4 were 200 grams of green beans and 7 ounces of chicken.
Yeah,
So we're
man,
just
that's the
eating
name of the
dirt.
game when you're getting peeled like that. That's there
Yeah.
are those days where that's just how it's got to be.
I don't
Um,
mind it, man. It's like you're in the trenches. You know it's getting results, so it's like you know.
That's
Let's
one of
go.
those dig. It's like one of those dig days where you do know, like, hey, like I just endure this. I win this day. Like, there's no chance I'm not better for this tomorrow and in the long run, you know?
Fuck yeah, that's a great way to put it.
All right, so here's one, and I figured it was about time that we started getting asked these questions with it
Uh-oh.
being all the rave now, and it being content, like the Arnold especially is kind of the signifier of the start of the contest season. So people
Yeah,
are
dude.
probably just starting preps for spring shows or already in prep. But I had someone ask if we have any opinions on using Ozempic in prep.
Yeah, that's funny. I've had a lot of thoughts around this with its bodybuilding application. Originally when I very first heard about it, like I remember my instinctual thought was, oh, that is going to be extremely beneficial for the sport in a lot of ways. But, for me, it's the question, my answer to this question is no different than my answer, like my opinion on it in general. It's just the newness of it. I don't love, like, we don't know what this is going to cause. There's theorized, things that and there's notable, gut effects that are obviously, you can prove, right? So it's just not been around long enough, and it's like I know what you can do without it, and it ain't that fucking bad, and it's proven. So like, why are we gonna, use it? I don't know. I don't think it has any, you know, application for a bodybuilder because at the end of the day, it works really well because it restricts, it causes you to want to eat less, right? It literally kills your appetite. Like as a bodybuilder, you need to be able to just deal with that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That was, so it's funny because my first reaction as to hearing about it and what it was and who it's for and what the like my thinking is always, well, why would someone take this? And then hearing
Yeah.
what the example was, where you know f- my general understanding of Ozempic, we're talking about specifically, is that it lowers your desire for food, like to the point that you're like, I see people that are outright like starving, and like average everyday people that have used it for an extended period of time look like they have like a prep sunken in diet face, which is just gnarly. Like that is just like bizarre to me. um but going back, so when I first heard of it and why someone might use it or whatever, I was just like, what the fuck? Like anyone that would need this in a bodybuilding prep, like shouldn't be bodybuilding. Like this isn't, like this is part of it. Like part of winning, part of a contest prep, and like the satisfaction you get from not necessarily even just winning, but knowing that you did your best and got to a stage. Part of the satisfaction in that is like I didn't crack, like I couldn't be cracked mentally. um
Yeah.
that's how I
Yeah.
look at it, at least.
I
But
do too. Something like too, like our guts probably our most important thing to take care of in this sport, right? So like anything that could potentially compromise that, like
right.
that's not a great idea. Whenever, like you said, it's part of it, and like we see what can happen without it, right?
Well, then it's
You know,
just like, so what, you're just going to set off a nuclear bomb in your gut so that you don't want to eat anymore? Like that sounds like a major problem. Like that sounds like you're voluntarily signing up for like serious health issues just to stop putting food in your face. Um, Now I will say, so that was my original opinion, and that was my original opinion on Ozempic specifically. Now there's been
yeah,
these other analogs that have come along since, and I've tried to do quite a bit of learning about them. I won't say research and sound like a dork. I've read some of the research reviews, but there's not tons on these other ones because they're experimental. So what I've tried to do is find people that have used them and listen to what their experience has been. Um, so for me, then there's the second version of it came along, and that was tirzepatide. And I've heard that, so Like Ozempic, let's call it Ozempic like GLP 1.0. And then tirzepatide is basically 2.0. So they added a secondary component to it. And I'm not super well versed on this stuff, guys. So like,
Yeah.
don't take my word for gospel here. And I'm probably not going to get this exactly right. But tirzepatide, my understanding is that it not only would lower your desire or like lower your hunger signaling. I have heard from people in bodybuilding that they used it deep in a prep and mentally it cleared them of like food focus and desire. So there's two elements to it where it's like the physical hunger in your stomach that you're feeling is gone, but then also that mental noise and stress about constantly desiring food is also gone. And so I heard that, and I heard that there were bodybuilders that I respect using that. And I was like, okay, like I could see that. I still
Yeah.
personally wouldn't choose to do that. Like, but I hear that and I'm like, okay, I can see why a little bit more.
I know a very well known coach that uses tirzepatide with every prep client. It's definitely becoming mainstream.
Every client, that sounds like it. See, that's where I think it could be a problem. I think on a per basis or per person basis, I think it's what I'm getting at is I think um, this. So there's a third one that came along then, and that's Retrutitide. So that's basically Ozempic 3.0. And
Mm,
this actually is the one that piqued my interest the most because there's a third element to it where there is, again, I'm not super well versed in the why and the definitions of it, but there's something that acts on your glucagon where there is it enhances actual fat loss. So it's not just, oh, you're losing weight because you're eating less. There is actual like for
like
a
I like
calorie like same calorie diet, you will recomp because there's additional fat loss happening. So you could put two people on the same amount of calories, and the person on Retrutitide is going to recomp and look better eventually because there's actual fat loss happening from this drug alone, just regardless of what else you're doing, output, input, whatever else. So I have dug into that quite a bit because that's interesting to me. That almost feels like this is like a new age, like this is like the new big tool for like biohacking or bodybuilding, right? Um, and so that one interests me. And so I have not personally used it yet. So I have a tough time recommending drugs to people that I haven't used.
yeah.
Um, but from what I understand about all three of them, the Retrutitide would be the only GLP that I could get behind because there is like a tangible, like the way that Clen actually burns fat, there's a tangible difference.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, like I need this for a mental willpower standpoint. There's something physical happening.
Yeah.
So I actually plan on using this. I plan on experimenting with this because these are just going to explode and get bigger and bigger as time goes on. And so I want to feel well versed enough or have enough experience to where I'm not just in the dark when people ask me about it. Um, and so I'm
Yeah.
gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna try it
Oh, boy, yeah.
just to see.
I hadn't even heard of that one. Admittedly, I'm not like well versed in any of them because I just don't even particularly care to learn about it. Like
Yeah,
at this point, even though it could be valuable, but that sounds really interesting. It reminds me of that SLU PP 332. Have you heard of that?
I have. So I planned on pairing the two together, from what I've
Sure.
heard.
Yeah.
Um,
I am trying that right now.
oh, okay. What's your experience, man?
Um, I think early on I could feel a more like a stronger hunger signaling after taking it in
Okay.
the morning. Like I would get ravenous. But
How
like
much on how much are you taking?
300 daily.
Okay, that's pretty low from what I've heard.
It is lower, but I just was wanting to just run it at like because I'd never have just to
Sure.
see. Like
Yeah,
I was like, I don't really need it. If I get anything out of it at all,
it's a
cool.
plus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I don't. like I'm probably gonna run out soon. I probably won't even continue using it because I'm like, it's like I don't feel like it's doing that much.
It's
Yeah,
pricey too.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think I'll just take it out. But I ran it for like 8 weeks, I think.
Okay. Which is
Yeah,
interesting though, because thinking back, I mean, and there are plenty of other factors, but you have definitely noted like how lean you stayed during your rebound. It was a surprise to you, and all these different things. So it makes you wonder because I have heard of people using 1,000 micrograms a day.
mm,
And it seems to be one of these things that there's not really like it doesn't affect your sleep, even though it's like an exercise uh, mimic, I guess is the
yeah,
word for it,
yeah,
which is very interesting to me because stimulants, I'm extremely sensitive to stimulants to
right.
where it big time.
I didn't get any of that, and I ran it before
Right.
I implemented any other stims.
Right. So that to me, that made my ears perk up where I was like, okay, like I've heard people compare it to Clen, but to where it doesn't affect your sleep at all. Like I've heard of people taking it before bed and falling right asleep.
Yeah,
Um,
I
so
take
then
it.
I hear that and I'm like, holy shit, this could be just for my struggle to sleep in prep. This could be like a game changer then. Um, so I am going to pair both of those. Um, and so just to be transparent with like the audience, have the research reviews should have different groups where people used 8 milligrams of retrutitide per week, 12 milligrams of retrutitide a week. I'm going to try 2 milligrams per week. And these drugs, these GLP drugs have a half-life of 6 days, which would lead you to being able to administer them just once a week. I'm personally going to microdose it, and I will probably do, um, like a third of a milligram every day to get to that 2 milligram per week. And I'm just going to see what the deal is. Um, and then with
Okay.
the SLU, I'm going to pair it as well with that. And I will probably start at 500, and I think I'd probably work my way up to something like 750. At that point, I feel like I'm giving it a fair shot. And if something is going to happen and there's going to be a noticeable effect, it will happen at those doses. Like to me, if I need to go more than that to notice anything at all, then it's just not worth it to me. So I'll give it a fair shake and we'll see. But yeah, I thought that was interesting, and I'm not surprised that people are asking because these things are just all the rave now. And despite all the different shit you hear from influencers online, like weight gain and weight loss is really just calories in versus calories out. So if there are these tools then that either have you A, burning more calories at rest, or B, just preventing you from eating more, there might be something to it. I'm going to give it a shot. Again, I don't think I've never needed the mental side of um like handling a diet. I've done it 10 times without ever using any of this other shit. But the idea that there could be more bang for your buck of your efforts in terms of fat loss, I'm interested because I'm always someone that has to um, diet and push pretty hard at the end to get that last bit off. Like glute wise, it's not uncommon for me to have to do like 2 hours of cardio a day at the end. So if this is going to prevent me from having to do that, and then I can be a little bit more full, a little bit more big on stage, I'm all for it. So there's no rules in bodybuilding. I'm going to give it a shot because I want to be able to say that I used it. That way, when people ask me, what was your experience with this, I can say something. So,
Oh yeah.
um, okay. So this guy asks, to make the most progress over a period of roughly 3 to 5 years, would you compete every year, or would you take long off seasons?
Uh, man, that question to me is like I'm kind of torn on it because I've done both and I get good results from both approaches. Like,
I feel this, dude. When he sent this in, I've got this question probably 2 days ago on Instagram, and I literally just like sighed out loud to myself. I was like, because I
uh,
feel the exact same way.
yeah, man, it's like both have their time and place to me. I don't know, it's tough, but I'll say, ultimately, I think if I had to like give a real, deep rooted answer to that, is to kind of like do both, like get show lean, maybe compete if you feel like it, hit like a really good rebound. And if you're undersized in that show, hit that rebound and then like do a mini diet for like 8 to 10 weeks and get really nutrient sensitive again. Like, but don't get show shredded, and then do it again and do that a couple times. And like that is like, that would maximize your progress more than like coming all the way down to a show level leanness every year. Get kind of like have those resensitization phases, but like don't get show peeled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, and especially with how long-winded I am, I feel like I'm just going to take this question for a ride. Like this one is like, it's tough because like you said, I've done both. I mean, I did a 3-year off season and I came back
Way
30
bigger.
pounds heavier, like
Yeah.
way more complete and way bigger. But then this year, like I'm going to turn around and compete on the exact same timeline that I did last year. So I'm
Right.
talking exactly a year apart,
Improved.
and I'm bigger. I'm bigger,
Vastly.
and yeah.
I mean,
So
look,
it's
look
like,
what I just did, right? It's like I took a
I know
three
you
year
had
off.
no off season basically, right?
Yeah, I had a huge long off season, came in like good, and then I hit this rebound and like absolutely bigger. So it's like, they both have their application. they both fucking work.
I would say so this person asked about like a time period of like 3 to 5 years. I would say if I'm trying to just give an answer to like get them on the board, so to speak, I would say in that 3 years, you probably should do 3 different preps and get show lean 3 times. But it should be, I think, like looking back at my long off season, if I had to critique what I could have done better or differently, it would have been a more cyclical approach, like you talked about. I spent just long periods just in like a
Yeah.
high surplus.
Yeah. Bro,
And
as
I,
soon as feedback tells me to stop, I just stop and I go the other way.
yeah. Um, which when time is no issue, I think that's looking back and looking forward. If there is no like set fast timeline, just listening to the feedback, like when you're sensitive, is a great way to do it. Like, when you have a meal in the off season and like you get like a vascular response within like 10 or 15 minutes, like, you're just around the house or around the office or whatever, and all of a sudden you look down and you're like your forearms and everything's all veiny. As a general rule, as like a simple man's rule, like you're probably in a pretty sensitive spot. You're probably in a pretty good spot.
Yeah.
I would keep an eye out if your end goal is always to get back to the stage. You should definitely keep an eye out for whatever your fattest body parts are. Like for a lot of guys, that's like lower back or lower outer quadrant of your glutes or whatever the case is. Like if you start like, even if your visuals elsewhere look okay, like you still have a decent set of abs, you still have some quad lines. Like if you turn around and you have a really dumpy ass, it's time to go back, because at the end of the day, for a bodybuilding prep, you are as lean as your fattest body part. So you have to keep in mind that you have to get back down to stage lean at some point. That was a mistake that I made for sure. I had decent visuals in certain parts, but my glutes were dumpy as hell. And I just stayed in the off season. And then because of that, it took me way, way longer in prep to get back to that level that I had been at before.
Yeah.
Um, so I like your idea of like, listening to the feedback and being cyclical. Um, I also think I wouldn't necessarily recommend like a 12-month turnaround, because kind of leaving you're going to leave certain phases a little short, I think. But as like a general idea, maybe like every 16 or 18 months you compete. And then that would probably land you at like 3 shows in that 5-year period. Because I think, we've talked about the differences in our approach, but I'm definitely a believer if health is good. and like the person's motivated and excited to do it, I think a rebound after the show can be probably your most valuable time of the whole year. And it doesn't take much in terms of like drugs to facilitate that. You don't need to go crazy. Um, so you do that. Let's say you get out of a show, you do that for 8 weeks, you do a proper cruise for 8 weeks. And then you have your 16-week off season. That's now you're looking at 32 weeks total. You do another full 8 week cruise, like no bullshit. Don't do like just a little gimme 4 week cruise. Now you're at 40 weeks since the show. And then now you start prep and maybe do 20 weeks. So, you're looking at something like 60 weeks after the show, 60 or 70 weeks in total. In between shows, I think that would probably be a good timeline. It gives you a chance to be healthy when you're supposed to be healthy. It gives you a chance to push and get bigger when you have a chance to get bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. That's solid, man. I think, everybody's risk acceptance is a little different too. You can obviously be more aggressive than that. And if your goal is point blank period to be the best bodybuilder you can be in that time period or whatever it is, and you don't really care about the outcome, physically, health wise, like it would be a different story. But this is talking, to the person who wants to, use some common sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like just go about it. I think there's a balance. I think you can want to be as good as you want, but also not be reckless about it.
Yeah.
And then it like your risk tolerance, like you said, that's a good way to put it. Your risk tolerance also comes down to your response. I have learned I can be a little bit more risk tolerant because my health is, like, knock on wood, it's pretty awesome all the time, no matter what. If I was maybe a little bit on the outside of that, I would be more
Yeah.
conservative about it. It just depends.
Yeah.
Um, man, I got someone that had asked about my off season and how things have progressed. I'd like to hear about yours though too, because you had just mentioned you did a long off season. So I'll read the question, and if you want, you can answer it from the perspective of that long off season that you took before you started. Like, we know
Sure.
that you have just recently gone through the 2 preps, but
Mm.
this guy asked, it would be cool to hear a timeline of how food, training, drugs, and body weight have progressed during that off season.
Mm. Yeah, it made me think real hard. It's been a minute. So let's see.
So how long was it for you? Like when, before this
June,
past year, when was the last time you competed?
June 22, and then
June 22.
October
Okay.
24.
Oh, right on. Okay. That is a good off
And
season.
yeah, so that's like what, 2.5 years almost.
Yeah. Over 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm trying that, there were a lot of phases in there, but like
So coming
June,
out of that, did you rebound or did you pull down to cruise?
uh I got like it had flattened out real hard that
Yeah.
prep, like really bad. And so like I kind of like was pretty aggressive with food afterwards because I could get away with it because I was just like miserably flat.
Yeah. You
And
were like way underweight, huh?
yeah, it was like a terrible look, and I was just really stringy, and it was just bad prep, man, all the way around. But so I
Yeah.
needed to get out of that. So I think I kept drugs in for a little while, probably maybe like 4 to 6 weeks after that show, and then I
Yeah.
like did a health phase, and then like I did a push with the coach I was still with then,
Okay.
and like at the end of the year. And then,
You want to say who, or you'd rather not?
yeah, no, I was working with Tyler Betson.
Oh, okay. Right on.
Yeah, I worked with him from 19 to like that time period right there.
Okay.
And
Okay.
yeah, and then I started coaching myself, and that was like at the beginning of 23, and I basically like did a mini cut, probably like 12 weeks, and I did that on like extremely low drugs,
Okay.
like nothing,
Yeah.
like 200 tests and maybe like a little bit of masteron.
That's a cruise for me, big boy.
Well, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
it was low,
But
but
like we've talked about, you can hold it on way less.
Yeah, no, and I just wanted to get really healthy because that off season
Yeah.
didn't go. My health got pretty, yeah. Like
Yeah.
I
How
got
heavy
fat,
did you get?
260, I think,
Oh shit. Okay.
or maybe 265. I
Fuck.
was,
Okay.
yeah, I think the heaviest I ever saw on the scale was 266 once, and
Was that like your new like PR high?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
big time,
Okay.
about like maybe 10 or 12 pounds or something.
Oh fuck. Okay.
Yeah, I was like hefty as hell, but like blood pressure was pretty whack, and like I just didn't feel good
Mm,
and stuff. So I got
mm.
like did the really low drugs and like did that for the first quarter of that year, and then did a one growth phase. And I want to say like, man, I'm trying to think back on that cycle and like how big it was. It was bigger, like it was probably
Relative
like,
to what you'd done, right? Like before.
yeah, it was probably like a 2 gram type of cycle.
Yeah.
It was pretty good, and then like I did two more growth phases after that.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, and they were each like 20 weeks or something,
Yeah.
16 to 20. And yeah, yeah, it was long, man. And then the prep was after that. So
Okay.
it
And how
was
long did you prep for?
I did a long one because it was my first one in so long, and I was
Yeah. No, that's
really
smart. I look back and that was a mistake I made. I had that long off season and I was heavier than I'd ever been. I was way out of shape. And
yeah.
then I tried to only get away with 16 weeks and it was a mistake. I wasn't ready.
Yeah, dude, I think I did like over 20 just to be
Yeah,
sure.
it's
And then
smart.
yeah, it was for sure. It was a good angle, but like inevitably, I was show ready like probably like 7 weeks out, 6 weeks
It's
out.
better than never being show ready. I'll tell you
No,
that.
no,
I'll
for
never go
sure.
on stage like that again, dude.
No, for sure, man. And like all I did was I was just able to eat into the show, but
Yeah.
which that was fine or whatever. And I got to experiment a lot with peaking and learning exactly how to like nail my peak, which became super simple because I got lean so early. Um, but yeah, anyway, like, progression of like cycles with those were like, they got a little bit bigger each one, yeah,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
then going into prep, even like this was the only prep, and I know we've had this conversation, but this was the only prep where I was like actually continued to get a little more aggressive
Yeah.
versus doing lower androgens because I was like, I'm doing the open for the first time. Like, I really want to hold this new size going into this, and like it worked pretty well. But like usually I do a lower amount of androgens in a prep
Yeah.
setting, typically, for athletes and things, and myself included. But this was the only one I did differently. So, that's been like 4 pushes now, essentially,
Right.
and then this is a fifth where I've like continued to kind of escalate that a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something to be said, like, you're looking back and kind of reflecting that maybe you were ready too early or whatever in that long prep. But also, like, I think there's something from my experience of this past year where I basically like dieted the whole year. I dieted for like 10 months or something. I think that there is something to be said for how long you're lean, like getting really lean and then being really lean for a long time. You're almost resetting your set point after like being out of shape for so long. And that's probably in part what enabled you to have such a sick rebound here, like as you're basically growing into your prep. Because I had a similar experience, I think, after dieting for so long. I had like just a crazy rebound where my
Yeah,
weight was just
so
like
sensitive.
continually just going up like in waves, and it was just like the visuals and my health are good. Like it's like, even Compton like is a very he's very I would say like muted or just, man of few words. And then like at
Yeah,
one point I remember him being like, dude, you've made like a year's worth of progress in 8 weeks. Like,
it
and
can
it's like,
happen, man. We've seen it,
yeah,
a million times over in this sport, right?
yeah,
It's not something made up. Like they're
yeah.
real.
So for me, I'm not going to go through the whole long off season because I don't even think I executed it well, and it didn't have
Sure.
as much uh, direction as yours does. It sounds. I definitely took more drugs than I ever had up to that point, and my training was like awesome dialed in. Diet was awesome dialed in too. It's just I just let things go on too long. But drug wise, I definitely took more than I ever did, and I was bigger than I ever was. And that reflected on stage, it just wasn't my best. But then so dieted for like 10 months or whatever, competed at in April and then again in August. And at August, I was properly conditioned and it was a good look. But I had kind of some of the new muscle I had added, I think had kind of withered at that point because you're in a deficit for just so long. So
Yeah.
like some of the exotic stuff that I felt like I had added, like some arm size, some like rear delt sweep, like kind of started to just flatten on me.
Yeah.
Um, but that's I wanted to show that I could get back in shape again, and
Got to.
so yeah, it sucked being on stage and not being in shape. So um, I kind of presented two different looks. I was like kind of big and not as tight at one show, and then a little bit smaller, but super tight at the other show. So, coming out of that, I was determined to just treat my rebound like an extension of prep. I'm in a relationship with an incredibly supportive partner. She never nags me about bringing her out for food or when are we going out to eat? Can I make you something? None of these issues. Um, so it just enabled me to just stay locked in. And I did that. Honestly, I did like a no cheat meal, just contest prep like
Fuck yeah.
rebound. For 6 weeks I went before I eventually took her out to dinner. And the rebound lasted 8 weeks, but those final 2 weeks I would go out on the weekends or whatever the case was. But so I did that and I went from I think my lowest in the second part of that prep, like before Tampa, my lowest was 210 before we started to like fill back up. And I ended up at like 262 at the end of my rebound 8 weeks later. And it was a good look, dude. Like
Yeah.
looking back, I could say
Yeah.
it was a good look.
Well, I remember
Um,
seeing you in pics, man. You look good.
yeah. And then I cruise. So I'm lucky. Like I went and got blood work. Um,
Good.
I went and got a CT, like a calcium test done. It was
Cool.
perfect. It was a 0. Blood work's awesome. Blood pressure was even awesome at that point, even with all the weight gain. So we did a 6-week cruise, and then we started to push back up for what would be. I'm near the end of that now, but it's in total like a 12-week push because I'm competing on the same timeline for next year. So I'm like 1 year later. So I didn't have the full menu of a 16 or 20-week push. But to be totally honest about it, nailing the rebound the way that I did, I don't really feel like I needed it.
Well, that's the
And
thing. You could have did that or the rebound with the shorter push, and like the
right.
rebound worked great for you, right?
Yeah. I'll be honest, I'm glad that I did it that way because I feel like the rebound first and then the push second, um, the like gains and stuff from the like off season push are much slower, which is to be expected, but it's also just it takes like I thought I was eating a lot of food in my rebound. I had gotten up to like 5,800 or just about 6,000 calories a day. And I'm at like 7,100 calories a day now. And I've been at that for a few weeks. So, we talked about on a prior episode how funny it is. Like oftentimes your body or some type of feedback will kind of tell you you're done with your push.
Right.
Um, so I'm like, whatever, 9.5 weeks into this. And I said to Compton the other day, I was like, I'm glad this is only 12 weeks because I don't know that I would be able to do this much longer. Um, Now that's brought my body weight. I woke up this morning, I was 275, definitely like a little watery. Um,
That's
but
big.
it's I feel
Jeez.
it, dude. I feel it. I didn't Compton had made note to me during the rebound because the weight was just coming on so fast. Like, hey, like just keep an eye out for your lower back. Like, I don't want this to be I don't want this preventing you from doing cardio or for being able to train your legs. And it never bothered me. Never bothered me once.
Yeah.
The past 2 weeks, my lower back has been, I'm kind of waddling around, even like on a rest day when I'm not doing anything, I'm kind of waddling around. because my lower back's tight. Blood pressure's still good. It's higher than I've ever seen it like consistently stay, where I'm like, 130s over 60 or 70, where I'm usually 120 or less. Um,
Damn, bro.
so
That's
that's not crazy for being like way heavier than I've ever been.
that's perfectly acceptable. Yeah.
Yeah. Like for the circumstance, it's fine.
Or the
Um,
100%.
and I'll be honest with you guys, because part of the question was the drugs. This is the most drugs that I've ever run. I'm on, uh, 2.5 grams a year. Um, and for a while, so I'm on 2.5 grams a year, but way less growth than what I'm accustomed to in the off season. I probably should have just been not been greedy and just stayed consistent, because I have found that 8 is like a perfect sweet spot for me. I don't even notice that I'm on growth in terms of like carpal tunnel side effects or anything. Um, so I was on that for a bit, and then I tried 15 for a bit
Yeah.
because I have a bunch of it. I have a bunch of it.
Yeah.
And this is my life, so I can swing it. But so I tried 15 for a bit, and for a couple weeks it was wild. Like my weight was coming up, and I honestly
Yeah.
felt like I was just looking tighter. Um, and then the carpal tunnel was insane. I couldn't deal with it. I had to come off of it completely. And then now, since then, I've only been able to settle it up at 4 IUs a day. So
No
I'm just
shit.
gonna hold that here. I can't do any more, dude. I can't do any more.
I woke
Um,
up with carpal tunnel today and thought of you from that story. I was like,
yeah,
fuck.
yeah,
And I hadn't had anything all prep until just this morning. I was like, oh, hell no. Don't do this to me.
yeah. No, it's fucked, dude, because it just ruined my sleep. I was sleeping in periods of like 40 to 60 minutes at a time, and then I'd have to get up. I'd have to go like get up and walk around the house. I'm like running my hands underwater to try to get the feeling to go away and stuff. Dude, I'm running the massage gun on my hands trying to get the feeling to go away. It was terrible.
Fuck.
Um, so yeah, so the gear is high. It's like 2.5 grams. I'm running high test, which is something I haven't always done. Especially in my more recent years, I'm on like 1,200 milligrams of test.
Is it
Um,
AI?
yeah, I'm using Aromasin Mondays and Fridays. I was using Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and it was just too much. Um, so I'm on Monday and Friday. I do a 25 milligram Aromasin. I'm on 800 Masteron, and then I'm using 500 NPP, which I've grown to love. Um,
Well tolerated for the most part.
yeah, yeah, and I don't think I've heard of guys using more. I've been suggested to use more, but to me that's a good number. It's not anything like super crazy. The cycle is heavy. This is obviously the heaviest cycle I've ever been on. But it's also like timeline dependent. Like this was not. I've done 24-week pushes that I'm not consistently on drugs. This was a 12-week push, so it's like shorter duration, brought the brought the total up a little bit higher. And then
Did
so
you go
once
straight into that? Did you just start
I
there? Boom.
started high, I didn't start there. I probably started at 2 grams,
Yeah.
and then just like I'm kind of was winging it and directed it myself, like just as needed. Like if I was, there were times that he added like a big chunk of like there was a couple of updates where it was like he added in 800 calories, and then I was like, okay, like I'm gonna move this gear up then because I'm also gonna do more volume in the gym. Um, and so I've let those things kind of determine how much I'm doing in the gym. It's like, okay, food's up, drugs are up. I should probably be able to recover more, so I'm going to do more work in the gym. And honestly, it's been good. I haven't reached a point where I'm like, fuck, I'm buried. Like I need a week off. Like I just feel like I keep getting rounder and crazier pumps. So
Well, you know when that point comes. I mean,
yeah,
it's not, it's very
yeah.
obvious.
Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
I wouldn't be surprised if it at some point that hits me at the end of this in a couple weeks, and like
That'd be
one,
perfect, right?
yeah, like one of the weeks of my cruise is just a week off, or I train 2 or 3 times or something, but that's the
Yeah, I
time
need
for
it.
it. So, so I'll get to the end of this. I will do another cruise for 6 weeks, which honestly will probably I say cruise because it's less, but it will probably be more than what you hear of a typical cruise is.
Five,
Um,
600, you think
Probably
maybe?
500 total milligrams. I probably will do
Like
250
a
tests.
bridge, a bridge
A
more
bridge,
so.
yeah, yeah, or a maintenance fit. Like, how much, I'm bigger and heavier than I've ever been. So how much do I need to take to hold this before I go into prep? Probably more than just your average 200 milligrams, but not anything ridiculous. So probably 250 test, 250 mass, and then probably keep the GH the same at 4. And I'll probably keep that the same until I'm like 12 or 10 weeks out. And then I'm going to try like really high GH again when I'm leaner, eating less food and moving more. Um, Hoping that all of that equals like that less water retentive, like carpal tunnel side effect that I get. So, yeah, that's the
Cool.
long version of everything.
That's good, man. That's exciting. We're kind of in similar spots with things, which
Yeah.
is cool. We're not getting any younger, so it's like we're at this point we're kind of being a little more aggressive with
Hey,
things,
yeah.
trying to accomplish some things before we call it a day. And you know, because we both had busy coaching careers, and it's at the end of the day, it's tough to keep doing this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I had been thinking about this recently, like for the first time ever, maybe from influence from some of the guys that we listen to on these podcasts or whatever the case is. Like I'm becoming more and more aware of my um, mortality in this. Like, like I'm almost, I'll be honest, I have kind of dreaded the idea of prep in years past where I'm like, oh, fuck, this is going to be a motherfucker. Like, you know, and this time around, I'm actually just really excited for it because I don't know how many more I'm going to get of these,
Bro, that's
like,
exactly how I felt in my last one. Every day I felt so excited because I was like, hey, I hadn't did it in 2.5 years, so I was thankful to be back doing it. But I was like, I
yeah,
don't know how many more of these I'm doing.
right. Especially like, if we just talked about that timeline where it's probably not even the best idea to compete once every 12 months. It's probably better to do once every 16 or 18 months, something like that. I mean, if you put it like that, I might, and I'm only going to do this until maybe 35 or 36. Like I might only have a couple of these left, God willing. And that's if everything goes as best as it can.
Yeah.
So yeah, couple, I think about that. And so then it's like, okay, well, I don't want to be reckless or cause any long term damage. And I don't think I am just based on how everything has always looked. But I also don't want to necessarily leave anything on the table. That's why, yeah, there's a couple of weeks where I try a fucking bottle of growth a day. Fuck it. Like that's never done me wrong. Like, why not? Let's try it. It's not going to give me a stroke. So, it was worth trying. I fucked around and found out in terms of the side effects, and now I have that in my resume
That's right.
as I know what that can do. So, um, all right, buddy. I say we wrap it up here. We probably went a little bit longer than I initially wanted to, but um,
It's all
appreciate it.
right.
Appreciate you making the time for us. I know how deep you are in prep and how you're feeling. Anything you want to add last minute?
No, man. This was good. We got to rambling. So,
Yeah, no, that's okay. I did one of these with my buddy Tom last week, later in the week after we
yeah,
did,
yeah, yeah, I saw that.
and it's funny because I had like made mention to him. I'm like, yeah, we'll come on. Like, he's like, you have topics? I'm like, yeah, I got like 4 or 5 topics. Like, I was like, you'll be surprised though. Like, a lot of times we don't even get through most of them. I asked him one question and we talked for like 50 minutes. So it's funny how one thing can just get a couple of guys that have similar interests going. So
Easy to do.
hopefully that can ends up being valuable and enjoyable for the audience. So for Austin Brown at 5.5 weeks out from the Arnold, I'm Joseph Percher. This was the One More Rep podcast. And until next time, guys, we are out.